15 years of being in service means 15 years of things to look back on, stuff that's been added, things that got changed, and most curiously mechanics that got taken away. I spent a lot of time discussing aspects that are no longer part of League, from abilities to runes to items and whatnot, but there are just so many elements that haven't been talked about that I feel like we could discuss this for hours and hours on end, which brings me to today's video. Having already covered categories of things in this game, for this topic I want to go over systems and mechanics that used to be very prevalent back in the day but no longer exist anymore for one reason or another, ranging from items to spells to fundamental aspects of the game. Time for another trip down memory lane, so let's buckle in and I'll see you on the other side. Before we get into the video though, I want to give a shout out to my longtime sponsor Opera GX once again, and they also want to wish you a happy holidays. Hope everyone had a great Christmas and is having a great Hanukkah so far. You guys know the drill with Opera GX by now. It's a browser optimized for gamers, giving you the ability to decide how much of your PC you want Opera to use up, since as we know, other browsers can get pretty gluttonous, especially with the RAM. That's old news, let's talk new news. First, now that Worlds 2024 has been long and done with, they've been working on fleshing out the Riot Corner in preparation of the upcoming 2025 season, along with even more expansions to the GX mod store. Throughout December, they've been giving away free Masterwork chests and key sets just by installing one of the GX mods, and they plan to continue adding more drops in the future. As a Renekton main myself, I would wholeheartedly recommend you guys check out the Renekton GX mod, but you can install any of the mods to qualify for the free stuff. As a reminder, the GX mods can be located in the GX store. Last month we got to see the conclusion of Arcane Season 2, and to celebrate, Opera GX is hosting a competition where you can create your own Arcane artwork and enter it for a chance to have it become part of the Arcane GX mod. You can make an art piece or video, whatever you want, and the judges will pick 5 contestants to turn their art into full GX mods. Definitely recommend you guys check it out and give it a try. You can use the link on screen or in the description below to learn more about it. Opera's been hard at work partnering up with Riot to expand more on the Riot Corner, so now's the best time to install the GX browser if you haven't yet. I've been an Opera GX user since 2021, so I can personally attest to it. Once again, a big thanks to Opera GX, great to be working with them as always, but for now, let's get back to the video. While still somewhat present in the current era, it's at a quantity nowhere near the same in scope compared to how prevalent it was back in the day. Auras. For the uninitiated, an aura is an area of effect that persists for a period of time, affecting nearby entities in some shape or form. At the moment, most aura abilities consist entirely of damage or buffs. For example, the damage over time found on Nasus and Renekton's ultimate would constitute auras, as does Garen's Judgment, Karthus' Defile, or Mordekaiser's Darkness Rise. Essentially, if you stand close to them, you take damage. These are the most common forms of auras. Meanwhile, on occasion, you have an aura that comes with a different set of benefits, such as Jarvan's Demacian Standard granting attack speed to nearby allies, or Neela's Jubilant Veil offering dodge capabilities to allies that stand within it. Shen's Spear Refuge can also be considered an aura. As you can tell, auras are still very much present within League of Legends, so why exactly am I including it in forgotten mechanics? It's because, compared to the modern day where auras are almost exclusively tied to a singular ability on a champion, back then some champions had multiple auras on them, and you could also artificially turn someone into an aura bot. Starting with the champion, everyone remembers old Taric, right? I mean, how can you not? Look at this man and his outrageousness. Taric's entire gameplay was characterized by giving himself and nearby allies as many stats as he could. His old W Shatter had an aura component that would give bonus armor to himself and nearby friendlies based on his armor, so simply by being near him you'd be tankier. Furthermore, Radiance had 2 versions, first of which being a toggle that would give Taric bonus AD and nearby allies half the amount for as long as he could pay the mana cost. The second version had a familiar effect, only instead of a toggle, it was a flat 10-second duration, but it also provided ability power. On a smaller note, old Maokai's Vengeful Maelstrom was one of the most iconic teamfight auras in the game, reducing damage taken for himself and nearby allies by 20% in a fairly wide radius. Stuff like this used to be rather common and opened up the door for surprising synergistic elements to champion gameplay. For example, Heimerdinger's old Techmaturgical Repair bots granted friendlies bonus health regeneration that could stack with items, giving his team a surprising amount of endurance on the field. Continuing down that route actually, let's talk about the bigger aspect of auras being forgotten about as a central mechanic: items. Again, we have a non-negligible profile of items that still provide auras to this day. Frozen Heart slowing down the attack speed of nearby enemies, Sunfire Cape's iconic damaging aura, or Abyssal Mask reducing enemy magic resist. But there used to be a lot more back then. In fact, many items just came with auras for the sake of having them. Locket of the Iron Solari is seen as a general burst deterrent, but back then, it used to be more of a magic resist item, once having an aura that provided bonus magic resist to nearby allies within 1100 units, a huge radius to have. In version 6.22, they took it away to make it a general tank item with a greater focus on shielding. Locket wasn't the only aura item with a ridiculous range. There used to be an item called Zeke's Herald with the most peculiar effect. Building from a Kindle Gem and Vamp Scepter, it would actually lose the attack damage and lifesteal on its base stats. However, it would reimburse it through the aura effect, providing the wearer and nearby allies 20 AD and 10% lifesteal with a range of once again 1100 units. For all intents and purposes, this was a fairly strong item and will likely be purchased quite often in the modern day, even from an individual point of view. 20% CDR, which I believe is about 25 ability haste, 20 AD, and 10% lifesteal for only 2450 gold is a very solid investment for most champions. Even earlier than that, Zeke's Herald used to be Stark's Fervor, which had an even stronger aura to it. 20% attack speed, 30 flat health regeneration, and 20% lifesteal, while nearby enemies had 20 less armor. It became Zeke's Herald a long time ago, I believe in 2012, but imagine giving everyone 20% lifesteal and effectively 20 flat armor penetration. There was an AP version of Zeke's, Will of the Ancients. Most players remember Will of the Ancients as an AP spell vamp item, but prior to Season 3, it used to give ability power and spell vamp as an aura, serving as a counterpart to Zeke's Herald. One last example would be the Runic Bulwark. So prior to version 3.10, Locket used to be a health and armor item that gave health regeneration to nearby allies, and we would have Runic Bulwark instead, granting persistent armor, magic resist, and health regeneration to nearby allies and minions, believe it or not. Very interesting, where you can make your minions tankier too. Sort of a predecessor to Banner of Command and Hullbreaker. Since then, the two items, Locket and Bulwark, effectively got merged together. There were two reasons behind auras of this variety being taken out of the game, key of which being the absence of interactivity. When you think of items in the current version, each purchase has a distinct function to it. You buy Randuin's to deal with crit strikers, you buy Thornmail to deal with auto attacks and healers, you buy Zhonya's to stall for time and avoid critical abilities, you buy Locket to protect yourself from burst damage, what have you. But auras back then were sort of a cover-all purchase. When you think of Runic Bulwark, there's practically no reason for support not to buy it. Granting bonus armor and magic resist is appreciated by virtually any team in virtually any situation. Zeke's Herald was a bit more situational, but it was a great purchase on supports regardless. The attack damage and lifesteal would be of great benefit to at minimum one other person, the ADC, whom the support is going to be standing next to anyway. For each additional AD focused champion, the item would become further efficient. Supplying your entire party with bonus AD, AP, health regeneration, armor, magic resist, attack speed, and so on purely by existing, while extremely practical, isn't exactly what you would call conducive to a strategically challenging game. You essentially stacked aura items on a single champion, and everyone would hover around said champion to become so bloated with stats that they could effectively brute force their way through anything. Which brings me to the second reason behind auras being phased out. You guys remember Gold Funnel Mastery Tarek, right? How by 20 minutes, Mastery would be at 4 items while everyone else was still at 2, meanwhile Tarek would provide as many defensive items and stuff as he could in addition to his own abilities? Do you remember Old Yumi, a single ally with the combat pressure of 2 champions condensed into one? That was basically auras. In addition to carries purchasing their core build to deal damage and stuff, supports or other champions would build aura items to further strengthen them, funneling more stats into those champions. If you think about a support building Locket and Zeke's Herald together, their AD carry would become tankier and deal more damage. And it's not like they weren't substantial boosts either. Take Zeke's Herald for instance. When buffing all 5 members of the enemy team, it would theoretically have a gold value of 7670, over 300% gold efficiency on a single item. Runic Bulwark was the same, buffing your entire team, and remember these auras had generous radii, would be 240% gold efficient. 2 items with a total cost of 5400 gold would offer stats totaling up to nearly 15,000 gold in value. You'd be trolling not to build these items. Items like Gold Locket were practically mandatory on supports back in the day for the sheer power they could offer. Understandably, it didn't make for a fun experience playing support when, for all intents and purposes, you were forced to turn yourself into a stat bot for your team for no reason other than it being incredibly efficient if you did so, subsequently being a rather poor course of action if you chose not to buy them. Over the years, League has been shifting more towards personal expression as a result of players growing more and more exhausted with the over-reliance of teammates in solo queue. Auras were powerful, excessively so, but they were powerful for all the wrong reasons. That's why any summons of Vars you see today are much more situational or, as demonstrated by the ones you see in Champions, either self-buffs or ephemeral augments, not persisting ones. I'm sure I talked about boot enchantments once before, but I think a formal thought piece on them is in order. A long while ago, there used to be a series of augments you can purchase on boots to grant them additional effects, typically in the form of more tempo. These were Alacrity, Captain, Distortion, Furor, and Home Guards. The idea was to give boots more distinct functionalities to them from game to game that could account for different playstyles, champions, and win conditions. Alacrity was the simplest one, tacking an additional 20 more movement speed onto the boots, essentially behaving as a tier 3, from 25 to 45 and then 65. Then you had Captain, providing 10% bonus movement speed to nearby allied champions who were walking towards your general direction. Most logically, these would have been taken by supports or vanguards who led the charge. Distortion would enable you to cast tempo summoner spells like Ghost, Flash, and Teleport more frequently, and it would also give each of them a surge of move speed upon being cast. Fuhrer would supply 12% bonus move speed upon dealing damage with basic attacks or single target spells, a very handy buff to have for anyone who focused on auto-attacking or rapid spellcasts, providing on average more move speed than if you were to just build Alacrity. And finally, Home Guards, beginning at 20 minutes into the game, visiting the fountain would grant you extremely fast health and mana regeneration, making it so you need only 2 or 3 seconds to regen back to full at low health as opposed to the normal 5 or 6, and you would also gain 200% decaying movement speed, letting you exit your base at record time. You may have noticed most if not all these enchantments are still present in the game, just in various different forms. Alacrity could be located within magical footwear. By being locked out of boots after a certain amount of time, you automatically get them, and they give 10 more move speed than regular boots. Fuhrer is commonly equated to the rage effect you find on Phage in items that it builds into, basic attacks on hit or physical damage granting bonus move speed for a short amount of time. Cosmic Drive can technically be the AP version of that. Distortion's been split into 2 runes, Nimbus Cloak, which offers a burst of speed upon using a summoner spell, and Cosmic Insight, reducing summoner spell cooldowns. The amounts are lower, but that's to account for applying to all songs, not just tempo ones. Captain doesn't have a direct one-to-one version of it beyond Janna's Tailwind, but there is the Trailblazer item, leaving a path behind the holder that grants a boost of speed to nearby allies, and by extension the Elixir of Iron, which did exist prior to boot enchants being taken out. The point is, there are alternatives. Home Guards, of course, has been implemented universally, turning on after tower plates fall off at 14 minutes. Now, why were boot enchants taken away? To be honest, I have no idea what the practical reason was. I find boots to be a very unfulfilling purchase to make. You only do so because not building boots is tantamount to griefing unless your name is Cassiopeia. For most champions, boots are so integral to their functionality that even if you work 6 items, it's better to keep them than to sell them and buy a completed item, assuming that item isn't a tempo-enhancing one. Prior to Zephyr being reinstated, most AD carries would buy Phantom Dancer, as that would more or less offer the same tempo as Berserker Greaves, but with more attack speed and some extra AD. Other than that, the only theory I have behind them being taken away is because of the lack of balance between them. Most if not all the time, the majority of players would strictly rush the Home Guards augment over the others. Not to say no one bought Alacrity or Fuhrer, but Home Guards becoming a universal mechanic added to the game is a testament to how often it was purchased back in the day. Being able to quickly restore health upon recalling and hauling your ass out of base in seconds was crucial for getting to where you needed to go, considering the 20-minute mark onwards is when champions are roaming around the map and laning phase has unofficially concluded. On occasion, you might see champs like Master Yi and Jax build Fuhrer, as it would help them stick onto their target some more, or less mobile champions would take Alacrity to help them get around faster, but from memory, I do not recall a single instance where anyone purchased either Captain or Distortion. Not because they're bad, but because Home Guards was just so much more usable for the bulk of the cast. It was too good to pass up. I would very much enjoy if they added the augments back, but maybe in a different form just to make boots feel more like a final purchase that you work towards and less of a buy it because not having it is worse than having it. Tier 3 boots please, thank you Riot. Lastly, I want to go over summoner spells a bit. The summoner spell engine has basically not changed in over a decade, having the exact same range of spells since 2014 or something, with only Smite and Teleport being changed around every so often. But we actually used to have many more back in the day. Going through a few of them, let's talk about Revive, which does exactly what it says it does, revive you. If you die, you get to instantly respawn with Home Guard's move speed and be allowed to get back to lane quickly. While maybe not the most productive summoner spell in the early game, towards the mid to late game when death timers can set you back a full minute, being able to instantaneously revive is why everyone hates dealing with Akshan late game. This summoner spell absolutely would break the game if it was allowed to exist in the modern day as is. Then we have Stifle. Stifle's a 3-second silence that also cleanses the target of any buffs they may have. While it may not seem like the most impactful summon in the game, a point-and-click 3-second silence that also dispels any buffs they have would be a complete death knell to certain champions. Like imagine using this on Singed, or Master Yi, or Bel'Veth, or Aatrox, or anyone with a steroid ultimate. They lose almost all their pressure. Of course, there's also the cries of anguish coming from Riven, Cassandra, and Yuna mains that this got re-implemented. Silence is a very dangerous thing to have last that long, let alone removing any beneficial buffs. You can learn more about that in my Silencer video. Now Surge is a 12-second buff that gives bonus ability power and attack speed. So it's kind of like giving you a 12-second Nashor's Tooth. Not sure as to why they added something like this back in the day, but this could definitely be a way to cheese early game by pumping yourself with a stat advantage on champs like Diana. Rally though is interesting. You summon a beacon lasting 15 seconds that can be destroyed by enemies, but while it's up, it would give 10 to 35 AD based on level to all nearby allied champions, kinda like a stationary aura. Notably, it had global range, so you could throw it down across the map and give your team some extra AD. Sounds impressive on paper, but I don't think even supports would take this. Exhaust, Ignite, or Heal would be much more impactful. As for Promote, it basically turned into Banner of Command, wherein you could superpower a minion. Depending on how broken the promotion would be, it could either be a must-have on any split pusher or completely useless. Looking at Stifle, Promote, and Rally, they all say global range, which I'm assuming is not intentional, so maybe it's just because they were taken out of the game that they were left as such. And last but not least, Clairvoyance, providing sight over an area for 5 seconds. Global Scrying Orb essentially. I don't think I need to explain why it's not worth burning a summoner spell slot for something like this. It would be one thing if it was, say, a 30-second cooldown that also granted True Sight, making it good for shutting down stealth champs, but at the same time it would be too good at shutting down stealth champs then. Summoner spells are definitely something I wish they could revisit and experiment with some more. I feel like it's one of the most neglected systems in the game. Not that it's in a bad spot per se, summons are only meant to supplement the champion, not be game warping, but it would be nice if they went back and updated them. Alright, this video is going kind of long, so I think I'll end it off here. There were a lot of smaller mechanics the game had back in the day that were phased out for one reason or another. And I'm always curious as to how they would influence things if they were reinstated in the present day landscape. But if I could bring one old thing back to League, it would definitely be boot enchantments. I miss them so much. Anyway, that's it for today. Let me know your thoughts on these mechanics in the comments down below if you have any personal memories of them. And if you enjoyed the video, a like and subscribe would be much appreciated. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other nostalgia bait videos if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.